good evening. Hello, my name is Briana Bobo, and I would like to first start off by giving a little bit of background context to this conversation that I'm having with Dr. Gray this evening. So my background is that I work in digital marketing and emerging media management. I have a variety of interests, but a lot of those, for the sake of this conversation, I'm definitely going to focus on equity and access in healthcare. And I know that my guest, Dr. Gray, also cares very deeply about equity and access broadly, but definitely in the higher education space. And so switching gears a little bit, I'm gonna go into her bio just a tiny bit, and then she can also introduce herself as well. So Ashley Gray is a St. Louis native, now residing in the DC metro area. She moved there to enter an inaugural doctoral cohort in the space of higher educational policy and leadership studies. I'm going to pause here because, again, I think it's important that she share a little bit of her story. So I'm going to pass the mic to you, Dr. Gray, if you would like to just share a little bit about yourself, about your program, and then we will launch into some fun questions and then some more serious ones.
Yeah. So, I moved to DC with what could fit in my little Chrysler. About 4.5 years ago, I guess at this point, August 2016.
Oh, wow.
And I started off in the educational psych program, and then my program, the higher education leadership and policy studies program, opened up at Howard. And I did what nobody does. I transferred.
Ooh.
And it was the best decision I made yet. And so I'm actually the first graduate of that inaugural program. So I'm excited to be here. So thank you, Friendly, and thank you, Bree. I'm so glad it's you.
Yeah, likewise. So first, thank you for that. I'm going to launch into some fun get to know you questions, and then we'll get into kind of the meat of this discussion. So I'm going to have you finish some sentences, okay? So my favorite way to spend the day is?
The church is going to see this, right? No.
Yes.
Typically either on a beach or, some combination of the beach, reading, watching what I affectionately call ratchet TV. So the beach for sure is probably the best answer.
Okay. So I feel most at peace when?
At the beach again, interestingly. Yeah.
By
water.
If I could talk to my teenage self, one thing I would say is?
That you actually do some really cool things. You turn out to be a really dope woman. And I think she needed to hear that.
That's awesome. And then finally, before we launch into the other questions, the person who would play me in a story about my life is?
Okay. I mean, I guess we're close to the same age bracket, but maybe Kiki Palmer. Yeah,
maybe
Kiki.
So.
She does a little singing. She does some acting. Yeah.
She would be good. She's a good choice. I like that.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so let's launch into some of these questions. So again, as context, I think it's important that we kind of center our thoughts on the fact that Dr. Gray went through this inaugural program and obviously had some highs and some lows, as many people do just with anything that's brand new. And so I kind of want to touch on that. So first, what drew you to your field of study? And then how do you feel like it aligns with your purpose?
Yeah, I always say higher education chose me. In the very same vein that I feel like Howard University chose me.
Wow.
I was a Black student at St. Louis University who had found a way to create community. And when I got done, I was committed to creating community for other Black students in the pipeline. And I think really my divine choices, I guess, my divine alignment is probably more appropriate, has led me to be able to do that work full time, especially my commitment towards elevating Black women in particular.
Wonderful. So what were some challenges you faced during your program and how did you overcome them? I know that this could be to go a million different ways, but maybe just start off with a couple that might surprise people in terms of challenges and what you did to kind of overcome those.
Yeah, I mean, there were so many. Any big decision, any big thing that you're going to do is going to be tested. There's a test of your commitment. There's a test of your faith. And mine was tested throughout. I mean, my first week of getting to DC, my car broke down.
Oh no.
In the middle of a neighborhood, folks had warned me it was so terrible. It was not. I made it through just fine, and lived to tell the story. Amen. But there were a couple things. Number one, checking in with your mental health. I didn't do that when I first got here. I had been previously diagnosed with anxiety and had thought that, surely I'm fine. This is normal. So when I moved out of town to a city where nobody I loved in terms of my family or friends lived, I went through what's called adjustment disorder, which feels very, very similar to depression. I didn't know what was going on. I was sad all the time. I mean, I was crying. I had no idea. And there was one point where I said, you know what, I need to get some help, because I'm introspective enough to know when it's time to reach out to somebody else. So that's one of the lowest and highest moments of my doc experience, was asking for help. And I think that's the theme of my doc experience, quite frankly. I was one of those people who kind of just figured it out, didn't really ask for help. Folks assumed I had it together, so I felt like that was the role I needed to play. The doc experience will unveil you, honey. I got unveiled. And so one of the other challenges was realizing that I no longer had to put up the facade that I had it all together. Started blogging, started being real, took the mask off, and it was one of the most beautiful processes ever. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. I think most people would probably be surprised to know that people do struggle with mental health and kind of adjusting, and what that feels like. And especially particularly the women or the men, or non-binary folks who look like they have it all together. And that, there might be internal turmoil. And so that's really beautiful that you shared that. So as you reflect back, and you kind of touched on this a little bit, but as you reflect back, what do you think was the defining moment of your program, if you'd like to share?
Yeah, I had so many, it's so hard to choose one. Okay. I've been tremendously blessed to be at Howard, to be in this program. I've had some experiences that people just don't have. Like, it just doesn't happen that way. So I got to meet Vice President-elect Kamala Harris at a private dinner. I got to hug her.
Wow.
She smelled like roses and promises.
I'm sure she did. I'm sure she did.
Girl, she smelled like a hope of a new future. Okay. And so I had a lot of really blessed opportunities to do really cool things through this program. I would say one defining moment, though, the dissertation process is really hard. And it's simply rooted in being able to accept whatever feedback you get. And there's a fine line between humility and humiliation. And I remember at one point in time, I had been so hard on myself before anybody else could give me a chance. And one of my committee members said, Ashley, this might simply be one of the best dissertations I've ever read. And I remember in that moment thinking, I had felt like an imposter this whole time.
Wow.
Like I was just sort of guessing my way. I was stumbling up. And it affirmed that, no, my steps had been ordered and I was actually doing the work necessary to substantiate that compliment. And that was one of the biggest lessons, is accept the compliments. I'm one of those people that sort of lets it roll off. You look nice today. Oh, okay, thanks. You look, you wrote a great paper. Okay, thanks. But I didn't actually let it sit in, and I seldom celebrated myself. So that was a moment of self-celebration for me. And I love it. I love to hear it still. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really awesome. So how has your relationship with God evolved over the past 4 to 5 years? I know that, again, going through a lot of different new experiences can really force you to fall and lean into God. So what do you think has changed most for you with your relationship with God?
Yeah. Getting grown is hard. That's the part nobody tells you. Nobody warns you that getting grown is outside of the responsibilities that come with being an adult. Nobody tells you you're going to have to renegotiate this relationship with God. I renegotiated my relationship with God so many times because it's a partnership. God is not interested in being the sole proprietor of anything. God wants a partnership. And I remember there was a time in particular, I had said, I let it escape my mouth. I said, I feel so disconnected from God right now.
Mm,
I just felt miserable. I think I might have cried myself to sleep.
mm,
And God blessed me with a wonderful dream. And I didn't think I was going to get on this interview and cry, but I should have known better. God blessed me with a wonderful dream in which my favorite human, my great uncle, came to visit me in this dream
mm,
and just really reinforced that God loved me.
mm,
And I remember in that moment thinking that the question was never whether or not God loved me. The question was I hearing and receiving the love? God has bountiful love to give.
yeah.
And I really wish we spent more time on that message of God's love instead of God's wrath, instead of God's anger, God's disappointment. God
Hmm.
has so much more love than those things. And so I would say my relationship with God has changed so many times. It's ever evolving. Even now being done, I'm like, God, is it real? We
Mm,
really got through this thing, God.
wow.
So I'm still in a state of like, this is surreal. When people call me doctor, I'm like, who, me? I'm still working to accept that. Because people say my name and I'm like, oh, me. Okay. And so I think my relationship with God is evolving and I'm okay with that. Some people might have a good, clear answer on that. My relationship with God is ever evolving. Next week, it might look a little bit different. So I'm grateful for what it is and what it has been.
Yeah, I think you said something really poignant there about, if we stopped preaching or maybe lessened the degree to which we preach fire and brimstone and you're not good enough, then we might not have some of these internal struggles, but that's probably another conversation for another
Yeah.
day. But I'm glad that it evolved and that
You
you're
raise a
honest and
point.
yeah, it's like what can you do? But there's something to that. There's something to that and the internal issues that we face because of some of the maybe theology that we were brought up on. So
Yeah.
that's really interesting. Um,
Bree, I read a book one time, and I won't spend too much time on this,
that's
but it
okay.
talked
Spend as
about
much time
learning
as you
to,
like.
thank you. It talked about learning to live loved.
Mm,
And I mean, every edge I had got snatched. Because
mm,
what do you mean I haven't been living like I'm loved? What does that even mean? How dare you have the audacity to say that to me? But that's the reality. When our faith is small, when we question whether or not God can do it, we're questioning whether or not God loves us enough to make it happen.
wow.
So part of learning to live love was accepting that God actually wants me to win. And winning might look different than how I define it, but God is always invested in my benefit. God is always invested in me winning. I have to re-examine what winning looks like in my head.
Mm,
Yeah.
wow. That's good. You gonna keep preaching.
Hey.
Hey, so I kind of want to pivot here and just ask, being in education, being in higher education specifically, pardon me, and being a believer kind of intersect in that you're trying to elevate people, you're trying to help people, you're trying to guide people. And so I would like to maybe explore in which ways you think your faith and field of study intersect.
Yeah. So, let me talk a little bit about my research interest here because I think that'll speak to my conviction.
Okay.
And the two have always aligned for me. I remember when I was a little girl, somebody was talking about, women, the role of women in the church
Mm,
and this and that. And then I just remembered thinking, did we make that up?
mm,
Or is that what God really said?
wow.
And I still live in a perpetual state of that. And that has guided really my research interests framing around the support and advancement of Black women to, is it that we're not prepared to lead, or is it that we're not given the opportunity? Is it that we're incapable of being at the helm, or are folks selfish with the helm because, quite frankly, they think one person is meant to serve? My life's work has been pretty radical, and I firmly believe God, created me to be a bit radical. It doesn't always make me wildly popular either, right? Somebody once told me that discipleship is not popular. It's actually the opposite of popular. It's hard work. And I remember I never considered myself a disciple. Like that seemed like a very hefty, big title that I wasn't worthy of. And the reality is, much like the disciples who were trying to preach the gospel, who were trying to share a message, who were trying to free the people, that's similar to the work that I do and similar to the work that I want to continue to do. So those things have been really intertwined for me, Bree, to the point where my dissertation actually ends in a poem that has so much biblical rhetoric in it that I did not realize, like Spirit was just pouring out. It's like more here, more there.
Wow.
And in my defense, I just busted out in tears reading it because it was that spiritual experience, you know, that is required for people who actually who work in their passion. There are a lot of people who go to work for the sake of work because bills need to get paid. And then there are some people who work in their passion. You can tell from the way that they mop the floor, to the way that they fold envelopes, to the way that they collect the collection plate, that they are working in their purpose and in their passion.
Yeah.
God has always placed me in position to be able to work in my passion. So I'm very grateful.
Wow. So can you talk a little bit maybe about how you arrived at your dissertation topic? Because you've kind of woven that through this entire conversation, but I'd like to maybe explore that a little bit more.
Yeah. So my dissertation explores the pathway experiences of Black women college presidents. I got there because the presidency, much like some of the roles in other organizations, have seemed to be the boys only club. And I've never been one to accept that things need to just be the way that they are. In fact, I think that's one of the most dangerous things you can say to me is that we've always done it that way. Because I'm always somewhere in the background like, oh, okay, well, let's switch it up. Now's the time. Like, why not now?
Yeah.
And so when I think about even growing up a very curious child in the church about what it would look like to have women lead, that definitely informed my research and my research agenda as it is today. It also it reinforces how I think leadership for Black women is perceived in and outside of higher education. My research goes far beyond the realm of higher education. That there's some things we can all learn to, you know, across organizational type, including church. There's something we need to learn about what it means for, as my sister scholar Brittany Cooper says, Black women's prophetic waymaking. Churches exist because of Black women's prophetic waymaking. Let's be honest.
Right.
And so when I don't see Black women honored in the spaces that we foster, that we cultivate, that we carry, it concerns me. And that's the same for higher education. My work is about lifting the veil and us getting to some action, because there is no reason Black women are not representative in the college presidency, much like we are in the undergraduate student body, or even as it relates to our advanced degrees. There's no reason Black women have the educational attainment we have, but are not represented. You can't make that make sense for me outside of just blatantly saying we're navigating some gendered racism here. And so we've got to call a thing a thing. And that
we have to name it.
Outside the church and everywhere else.
Yes, we have to name it. There's power in naming it. We can't address it until we say that it exists. So what was maybe the most surprising thing that you learned while you were researching? Maybe a statistic that stood out to you, or a story? What really resonated with you in that way?
Yeah, you know, two things to answer that, Bree. One thing is that, you know, as we look at the college presidency across the United States, of the 4,500 institutions that we feature in the U.S. College President Study, which is the seminal study, only 5% of all presidents identify as women of color.
Wow.
No desegregation for race, no breakdown for ethnicity, none of that. So all women of color account for 5% of college presidents. That statistic probably haunted me for a couple weeks. And I was like, something ain't right with this. And of that number, how many are Black women? Right?
Right.
How many are Latina women? Right? Like, how many are Asian identified women? Whatever, you know, there was no breakdown of that number. So my research helps to fill a very wide gap in that way. You know, another thing I would say that really took me by storm, Bree, was when I was interviewing my participants from my study, and I call them affectionately, I call them the Super Six.
Okay.
I mean, these resumes, the work that they have done. One of my participants had informed another country's government on their welfare system.
Wow.
And they didn't think she was qualified to be president of an institution. What?
Right. Make it make sense. Make it make sense, please.
And when they shared their stories, there was so much similarity in the experiences I had had in my own professional trajectory too. Their stories were not in a silo because they were college presidents. They had experienced racism, they had experienced sexism, much like I have along my pathway to ascension. And so what they reminded me is that at any point in a Black woman's life, we've got so much to navigate, and we have to have different levels of resilience or fortitude. We've got to, our fortitude has got to evolve with us. And so when I think about that, I was enamored and also very saddened. I had hoped their stories were different than mine. I don't find any comfort in us all sitting in oppression. There's no comfort in us all hurting.
Yeah.
But it was a sobering truth to hear that their stories, you could have pulled it out of my diary.
Wow. Yeah. What are some things that you hope people will gain from either engaging with your story, your journey, your dissertation topic? What do you hope will either change or shift in the atmosphere as a result of your work?
Yeah. I mean, I hope people hear grace throughout my research and also throughout my story, right? My whole life is really just a testimony about grace, God's mercy, and God's favor, right? And when we think about those things, I hope that they understand that Black women have had to employ those things and give those things even when folks didn't deserve it. You can turn around and find 3 Black women that shoulda, woulda, and coulda cut you right on off as they should, they should have. And Black women are graceful. One of the things I hope it reminds us is that Black women should not have to gain resilience through struggle.
Oof.
And wow. That was a sobering part of my dissertation, Bree, is that all these women talked about all they had been through. And they talked about, you know what, had I not gone through that, I wouldn't be as resilient. And you know what, truthfully, I don't believe that. Truthfully, I think that is what we have been told and how we have been socialized, to think that everything gained has to be gained through pain. And even when you sit and listen to like Betty Wright's old, and I love Betty Wright. And I still listen to it because she's a vocal genius. When you listen to like No Pain, No Gain, that message is dangerous for a little girl who is wrapping her head around the world, wondering what the purpose of struggle is. Struggle is not supposed to be our tool for us to gain resilience. I don't want to be tougher because I had to get put through the fire. I want to be fortified because that's what God called me to be. And I don't believe that we should always have to endure pain to get there. So that's one of those pieces with my dissertation that still sits with me, and I'm still trying to make sense of that in my own life, because having been a woman who survived a whole lot, that is a message that I struggle with still, right? So yeah, I mean, I want us free.
Period. Yes to all of that. Because I agree with you. I think we should divorce the concept that we have to struggle in order to succeed, or that has to be a part of our narrative or origin story. It doesn't have to be, and for a lot of populations it's frankly not. And so we can ascend and rise just like everyone else, without that added weight of, like you mentioned, gendered struggle or race-based struggle. We don't have to go through those things. And so I love that concept. I love that we can maybe envision a different world where we don't have to be oppressed in order to succeed.
I mean, and what that does, that message is dangerous because it teaches us that we are unworthy of easy love.
Wow.
God has never needed us to go through every obstacle course for him to prove his love to us. Yeah. And so when we do that to other people, when we set up these mental and emotional obstacle courses, I actually I firmly don't believe that that's what God intended for us. Some love gets to come easy.
Yeah.
And that's God's love. So when we start parceling it out and selling it with fire and brimstone messages, I'm always troubled. How you sell love wrapped up in hate? It never made sense to me.
You are really dropping gems. I mean, not that I knew that you would, but like, I need to go back and sit with some of this because it's so necessary. It's such a necessary dialogue. It's such a necessary thing that we need to really wrestle with
Yeah.
to forge a new path ahead, because it doesn't have to be the way that it always was. And like you mentioned at the top of this interview, it's very dangerous to say, well, we've always done it this way. It's like, well, that's not how progress is made. So we can't stick with what we've always done. That's not sustainable, and that's not progressive. So
Right.
do you have any final thoughts? What I'm going to do here is I'm going to have you just maybe share some final words, and then we're going to move into a final lightning round of fun questions, and then I will let you go about your evening. But are there any other messages that you think you'd like to share with our viewers and listeners that might really help them along their way, or share a little bit of insight again about your process and your journey?
Yeah. The most important message is probably the simplest. Listen to Black women. And don't listen to respond. Don't listen to then go and take their brain trust and create something that they gave you the idea for. We know that happens. And honor their voices, even if it's not your experience. A lot of times we want to qualify folks' experiences based on what we think. It's not the way it works. I read The Shack a couple years ago, and I believe, actually, a couple years ago, I think Pastor Mike might have had folks at Bible study reading The Shack.
I think so too.
I think so. And that book changed my life because it talked about relationship over right. And part of our relationship with healing Black women needs to be focused in on listening to Black women.
Yes.
Not suggesting, not telling, not demanding. Listen to Black women, because I firmly believe God has placed something very powerful in us. And I'm not saying what he's placed in other folk ain't powerful. That ain't my place. I can't speak for God. But what I do know is that the fire I feel in my bones when I'm talking about Black women, he gave me that. What I do know is the tears that fall from my face every time I think about how my work might be advancing Black women, how it could potentially impact a Black woman's life. That's from him. And if God loves Black women enough to place this gift and this fire and this love and this grace inside of us, I hope we really get to a place as a community, as a church, as a world, where we are really honoring the voices of Black women.
Thank you for that. That was just, beautiful in a sense that I echo a lot of those sentiments. I just strongly believe that we should be listening to Black women, listening to listen, listening to engage, listening to improve. So as we close here, now that we've gone through some of the heavier topics, I do have a fun lightning round for you. It's called This or That. You cannot ask qualifying questions. That's not allowed. Okay. And I'm also not allowed to judge you if you pick the wrong one.
Okay.
Okay. So here we go. Netflix or Hulu?
Netflix.
Okay. Spaghetti or fried catfish?
Catfish.
Okay. Gas or electric stove?
Gas all day.
I know you a little bit, so I figured I would know some of these answers.
Now, if there's one thing she likes to do, she likes to cook.
You be throwing down, okay? Okay, so here we get into a little further ones. Target or Walmart?
Target.
Okay. Trader Joe's or Whole Foods?
Trader all day. I feel like I need Trader Joe's tattooed somewhere.
I love it. Worst drivers, St. Louis or the DMV?
DMV, no breath needed. DMV, hands down, all of them. Terrible drivers. I have no idea how the insurance companies even allow some of these folks to drive. I said it.
Okay. Would you rather have a personal trainer or a personal chef?
Oh, trainer.
Okay. Patti LaBelle or Gladys Knight?
Ooh, the devil is a lie. The devil is a lie. Ooh.
You have to pick one.
My God. Okay, fine. I'm gonna go Gladys. I'm going love overboard. I'm talking about I want the shoulders. I want that tone. I'm going Gladys.
Okay. Flats or drums?
Flats. I think people who eat drums might be like a little bit off. Like they make poor life decisions sometimes. And so flats me, please.
Original Aunt Viv or new Aunt Viv?
Original. I want the full dance routine. I want chocolate skin and I want attitude. Give me original Aunt Viv.
Yes, ma'am. For every mountain or great is thy faithfulness?
The question is, which wall do I want to slide down on which song? All right, for every mountain. Jesus.
I know, these are tough. I have no doubt or the blood still works?
Okay, I have no doubt with Larry. I'm going to be intentional with Larry singing lead. I have always loved hearing Larry sing that song. I love that song. So yeah.
Okay. Banana pudding or chocolate cake?
You know, every time I seek to do right, evil is present. I just okay, chocolate cake.
Final answer?
Final answer, kind of. Yeah.
Janet Jackson or Nelly?
You don't have to say the other name.
I know. Okay.
Janet, me, please. Demita, Joe, please.
I figured.
Yep.
Fried rice or St. Paul sandwich?
Both. I mean, okay, give me the rice because that's necessary. And then the St. Paul is like the icing on the cake. Yeah, you got to start with your foundation. You know, you got to be, you got to make sure your anchor is firmly placed and the rice is the anchor.
Okay. Anchored in the Lord, yes.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Blonde Ashley or redhead Ashley?
Okay, so I don't know. And I actually am confused about which color to go back to. I had a lot of fun blonde, but there was some about spicy caliente red. I think I'm going back blonde. I'm doing strawberry blonde next time.
Okay. A nice middle in between.
Yeah.
I feel like I already know some of these answers, but I'll just humor me.
Yes.
Going to the beach or going to the mountains?
Beach me, please.
Okay. Karen Clark Sheard or Kiera Sheard?
I need the OG. Give me the mama. Karen, me, please. I mean, Karen walked so Kiera could run. We got to give honor where honor is due.
It's a must. Okay. Gina or Pam?
Pam.
Parkway or Rockwood? Now be careful here. Be careful. Parkway or Rockwood? Oh wait, I said at the top that I couldn't judge you for the wrong answer. Go ahead.
So as a graduate of Parkway South High School, class of 2004, home of the Patriots, wow. I'm going to go with those Parkway South High Patriots, to be specific. Parkway me. The full roll.
Okay, let me get it together. Michael B. Jordan or the athlete Michael Jordan?
Mm. Ooh, this for the church, Lord. Michael Bakari Jordan, please. Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord. I think that deserves a praise break. Just
We got to insert a praise
oh,
break. We need a moment.
you've been good, God. You've been good to
I
me.
see what you've
Brought
done
me a
for
mighty
others.
long way.
Lord, I see what you've done for others. Okay.
Do not pass me by. If you giving out Michael B. Jordans in the new year, Lord, do
Don't
not
do it
pass.
without me. Okay. And then finally, meeting VP-elect Kamala Harris or meeting Liz Warren.
Yeah. Liz Warren was so sweet to me when I did the press conference with her. She was amazing. And I would love to, I just want to go like bake cookies with her and her dog. Let me say that. And then there was something electric about meeting Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, my bison sister, there were so many things. Kamala me, please. Yeah, Kamala Harris for the people, most importantly for me.
Right, for the people. And with that, thank you so much, Dr. Gray. I think we will wrap up here. Again, thank you for taking time to just reflect with me on your journey and share some laughs and some insight. I think that it will really, again, just help people as they kind of navigate different spaces in their lives. Maybe they're embarking on a new journey, whether it's professional or educational, and might need to reflect on some of the tips that you provided and shared with us. So, people see the glory, but they don't know your story. I feel like I
Amen.
sound like Bishop Jones right now, but people see the end result, and they don't always know kind of what it took to get there. And so, I do want to again say thank you for sharing with us. And you are inspiring people that you would just be shocked. You're inspiring a lot of us, including myself. So again, thank you so much. And with that, I will close. Is there anything else you'd like to leave us with?
I just want to give a quick shout out.
Okay.
Or three.
Okay.
Um, you
Please.
know, I miss everyone at Friendly. Let me say that. I miss you all so much. I miss singing. So shout out to the alto section. Specifically, no shade to the sopranos and the tenors, but I miss all of y'all. I miss praise team. I miss collective worship. So I just want to send my love to everybody. Thank you all for this opportunity. I am completely humbled and honored and humored at the same time. And thank you all for letting it be Bree. She only she could do this in the way that she did it. So it's not by mistake that I had my home girl from across the world on here. And so thank you all. I am honored to be here. Keep me in your prayers. I'll keep you all in mind.
All right. Well, thank you so much.